Hi, Linda.
Hi.
So your name's Linda Thompson.
Yes,
Now, Linda, you were a journalist.
I was. Well, still
Well, you
am.
still
Still
am.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So where were you born?
I was born in Wellington, and then very soon after that we moved to Hastings because my father, his father died of stomach cancer at 53. So we moved at that stage. 3 children and mum and dad moved to Hastings, took over his father's motor business, and so that's where I grew up in Hastings.
Happy childhood?
Yes, absolutely. Other than my mother died very suddenly at 42, came home from school and she was dead on the bed of a rare heart condition. So of course life changed quite a lot. But no, happy childhood. My mother loved books and reading and poetry and all of that stuff. She'd much rather do that than fold laundry. So she was lying on the bed having gotten a pile of books from the library, which was normal. So that kind of changed things. My father remarried about 16 months later. We intend to marry quicker. He married a widow with 3 sons who we knew because they went to our school. Their late father was principal of the neighbouring school. So they sent their 3 boys to our school. So we were all in the same classes. So we became a family with 7 children. But they married right at the beginning of the academic year because at that point my brother was going to university in Christchurch. My sister was going off to help run a children's home. My eldest stepbrother was also going to university. So they timed it really well so that we weren't all living in the same house at the same time. So yes, other than my mother dying, and then my father died very suddenly at 63. He retired and was a gliding instructor. So he'd had a full medical the day before, but dropped dead of a massive heart attack. So that was something of a surprise. And then, of course, my husband died at 57, same thing. So, yes, had quite a lot of death and dying.
So you discovered your mother?
Yes, my younger sister, who was 8, we were all going to be tested. We were all going to an optician because my older sister, who's the one arriving today, they discovered she had keratoconus, which is where the cornea grows out to a point on your eyes. So she was going to need corneal transplants. So we were all checked because it's a genetic thing. And Jane was the last one to have to go to the optician. So she was yelling out the door at me, "Mum's asleep and I've got to go to the optician." And when I went into the bedroom, I realised Mum was not asleep. I was a St John ambulance cadet, so I recognised what was happening. Called a neighbour who was a nurse and sent my younger sister down to look after the neighbour's children who were all older than her. And she didn't know that, but until very recently, she didn't remember that she'd been sent out of the house because I knew it was going to be chaos any minute. So yes, Mrs. Buckland came down and rang Dad, rang an ambulance, and I remember my father driving down our street, Pepper Street in Hastings, stopping the car in the middle of the road and jumping out, leaving the doors open, and the ambulance arrived soon after. So, but yeah, I got Jane out of the house because she did not want to see what was going to happen next.
How did you feel?
Oddly, I have to protect her. This is going to turn into something pretty hideous. I remember having an interview with a very young, even at 13, I knew he was a very young police officer, quite likely his first interview with somebody who'd found someone dead, and feeling really sorry for him, thinking he's quite upset and he doesn't really know how to do this. So I was sort of calming him down. I don't know where that comes from.
So how old were you at the time?
13.
That's remarkable.
It is.
A lot of people would have, I would imagine I would have panicked and lost my head.
Yeah, I kind of didn't. And again, I don't know why. Whether it was my St John ambulance training that, I could see what had happened and that clearly Mum was dead and had been for a couple of hours because she was cold. Don't know why I was
maybe
quite
it's just your nature then.
I think it might be. I have low blood pressure, so I'm quite calm about lots of things. And I've worked in civil defence for a long time, training public information managers for the ministry, because I was public information manager, first for the Waikato and then for the Bay of Plenty. And that is a job that, it's part of what you do. As I was a regional council senior comms advisor, it's one of the jobs that you do. So you get training for that. But that was when I was a grown up. So whether it's that sort of thing about approaching disasters with a calm thought about what you're going to have to do. And I became part of a team that, because we had a whole lot of disasters in sort of about 2004, 2005. So I was sent to other areas with 3 or 4 others who were that team. I looked after comms. So you'd go into someone else's area, like Eastern Bay of Plenty, because I was in the Waikato then, and you can just take over and make things happen because they listen to you.
So you're one of those people.
I'm one of those people. And yet, when I grew up, growing up, I was a very shy child who never said boo to anybody.
But when the proverbial hits the fan, that's when you come into your own.
I suspect that might be it, because I can't quite explain why I feel about what's happening to me now and why I'm just, okay, this is happening. It's not bothering me. I haven't had, the only time I shed a tear was I was in the shower and my wedding rings and Max's wedding ring, and it flew off in the shower because my fingers had got so thin. Meh. That's when I had my first tears. But it was about that. How dare you, this beast, how dare you take those from me? I can't wear them now. And to me that was important, because as far as I'm concerned, I'm still married. Max has been gone 7 years this month. So yeah, I just sort of felt that was the only thing. Never shed a tear about what was happening to me and that it was going to be terminal. And I don't really know why. From being told to now a couple of months down the track, I've felt the same. It hasn't changed.
Well, I really need to ask you about Max, but I have got one question first. I'm very curious about your mum. You said that she was rather be reading poetry than doing the housework. And I'd recently been reading an article, a university article about women in the 40s and 50s in New Zealand. A lot were frustrated intellectuals.
Oh yes, definitely.
Was that your mother?
I suspect so. She'd been to Victoria University. Didn't graduate? No, I don't think she did, but she did do English probably. I never got a chance to ask her what she'd done in terms of degree, but that would have been what she'd do.
And that's quite unusual in those days.
I think it was. And of course then she had 4 children, so she was an at-home mum. And we got our mum all the time. She had Perthes disease in her hip as a child, which meant she walked with a very pronounced limp. She worked for a Crown Law Office in Wellington. Can't remember where else she might have worked, but once she was home, all mothers were at home with the kids, and there were 4 of us, so there was plenty to keep her occupied. My brother, who died in July of cancer, and he lived in Rome, he had bladder cancer, so he died on my birthday. That was really rude. I'm sure he did it on purpose.
How old was he?
75, so he's my older brother. He was also highly intellectual, although when they were doing IQ testing, Grant and I both were sort of up there. And as my mother said, yeah, but Grant doesn't have the sense to come in out of the rain. And that's exactly what it's like. Grant was he was an actor in the English Theatre of Rome. He wrote a novel, which was on the Amazon Hot 100, science fiction. He introduced me to science fiction when I was young. And we were probably most closely matched in terms of, we were the 2 middle kids and we got on very well. He lived in Rome for 40 odd years, so I saw him several times because I was a travel writer for the Herald, so ended up in Rome, and my sister and I went over and spent time with him. So yes, he got sick right on COVID, and you can imagine Rome and COVID was people were dying in the streets. It was pretty grim. And he had a catheter and it had to be changed, but of course there's no clinic that would see him. And finally, Paige, his wife, said, right, I found a clinic, and they discovered he had cancer at that point. So, but he's left me some lessons, and that he didn't know I was sick, and Paige and I talk a lot. He would have been quite horrified that I was now following him down this path, because I was perfectly well when he last saw me. But one of the things I learnt, because he was in bed from February to July last year, and I thought, no, I'm not doing that. So, and I don't feel like I should be in bed either. So I'm under hospice care now, so I've had the physio out, and she actually phoned me yesterday to see how my exercises were going. The red thing hanging on the door there is to remind me I do my exercises. It's a stretchy band, because I was losing muscle in my legs particularly, and I was fit up until, I still went to a couple of classes I was down at Bay Wave in the pool 3 or 4 mornings a week because I wanted to keep my fitness up. And I did belong to the gym, but I kind of bypassed that a little bit and kept it to the pool. But then this happened with this tumour, so I can't do the pool, which I'd love to be back in the water and doing it, but it's too risky for infection. So I was super fit at the time that this lump appeared. And from then on, all hell broke loose, basically.
So your diagnosis was very recent, in November.
In November, late November, yeah.
When you got the diagnosis, were you shocked?
No, I wasn't. Because I'd had all this build up for about the last 5 years. When Max died, we had both received letters on the Wednesday from the hospital. Him for, you'll get a cardiology appointment in due course kind of thing. That was on the Wednesday. And mine arrived for, you'll have a colonoscopy and it'll be on this date, which was three weeks later. So we were sitting outside and having our lunch and laughing about, okay, which one of us is going to pop our clogs first? And then he went over to Whangamata to look after these 2 cats for a friend. And I went over on the Thursday night and worked from there on Friday because I worked from home, so it was easy. I was a sub-editor at that point. And then he died very early Saturday morning. So he didn't get a chance to get his cardiology exam.
And he died from a massive heart attack.
What they call the widowmaker. Piece broke off, and you don't recover from that. So though I'll always wonder if we'd been here, relatively close to a hospital, would that have made a difference? But we're in Whangamata. And one of the things I did after that, because there was no rescue helicopter to take him to Waikato Hospital, because we're in Waikato at that point, whether that would have made a difference, don't know. So I made a complaint to the Health and Disability Commission and the coroner saying these things weren't in place. What's happening? As a result of their investigation, they have reinstated the air ambulance. And one thing I discovered, one thing that the cardiologist at Waikato told the GP who saw us at 4 a.m. with the ambulance, and she was absolutely brilliant because she has specialist cardiology qualifications, which was superb. She had a long running argument with the cardiologist. She wanted to do what's called thrombolysis in the field, which is an injection to break up clots. It has a lot of risks because it can cause a stroke or exacerbate things further. But for me, it was worth the risk. So she was arguing to do that. He said, no, there's 2 things on his ECG which are not compatible with that, so no, you can't. A little while later, I was reviewing a book of a New Zealand doctor, with her 10 most interesting cases. And she said until 2019, we were not allowed to do thrombolysis in the field. Now we are. 2019 was when I made my complaint. So whether there's a connection or not, I don't know, but now they're allowed to do it.
How did you feel after Max died? Did you feel that intense grief that time?
Oh yes, absolutely.
So let's just take a step back. You were married.
Yep.
And you had 2 adopted children, is that correct?
Yes, I adopted them with my first husband, though.
And then your marriage broke up.
Yep.
And then
when they were 3 and 5.
And then you met Max.
I met Max about a year later in radio. I was news editor for...
So that was Max Christophson. And
Max Christophson,
some will remember Max because he used to write in the Waikato Times.
He did for 20 years, yep. So I turned up at... a friend of mine that I'd worked with in newspapers asked me, can you come and be a news editor here? We've got a couple of young guys who really need to be sort of knocked into shape. So I went, God, I haven't done, that apart from radio, I hadn't done that in years. So I sort of turned up, and Max's version of events was they were told the day before, the two young guys, he and Chris, who later became head of Tourism New Zealand, I think, very bright young man. They were told, you've got to mind your P's and Q's, she knows what she's doing, you better turn up with a tie on, which was completely unnecessary because I was coming in going, I hope I can do this. So yeah, it was actually really funny. And he was sent out to pick me up from the front desk, and his version of events later was that I'm going to marry that woman. And I was 8 years older than him with 2 little hangers on. At that stage, they were 4 and 6. So that's where all that started, kind of thing. And I was oblivious because he was 8 years younger than me.
When did you realise that there was some feelings for Max?
Probably, I started there in about October, and he walked in with a Jackson Browne album, And I said, well, have you got the first one? And he said, no. And I said, which was Saturate Before Using. And I said, oh, I've got the whole set. You need to listen to this. This is vinyl. So I lent him that. And then he said something about, you've got to see this movie, which was Mickey Rourke and thing that was set in New Orleans. I can't remember what it was called. So we went to this movie together.
Was that the one with Robert De Niro?
Might have been. I can't
Sort
remember.
of supernatural overtones?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
And there was a young woman in the other leading role whose name I've forgotten.
Yeah, and I can't remember the name of it now.
I know the film. I've seen it twice. Yeah.
And we've got a copy of it. And it's got an unusual name. And of course, when I spent time in New Orleans later, I could see why it was like this. So we went to see this movie together. But he was this young guy that I worked with. That's all I thought. And then he was going to Washington. He'd been to Washington before, and I think just to play in their football team as much as anything, as well as work for the embassy. And the night before, I'd received a David Lynch movie, Blue Velvet, something like that.
Blue Velvet.
And all the guys at the station, right, we're going around to London to watch this movie, which was this weird movie. And so they all turned up, and Max didn't. I thought it was really strange. And then turned up later, and apparently he was getting the courage to turn up. So, and then when everybody had left, oddly enough, the station manager was holding out for him to leave. I didn't know that either. The station manager was a nice man, but definitely not my type. And a friend of mine who I've known since I was about 8 years old was also there, Vern Talbot, who Phil knows very well. And Vern could see what was happening and thought, I'm just going to wait these two out, and then finally had to go home. And yeah, Max decided to tell me what he thought, and then got on a plane and went to Washington. I'm sitting there going, what?
Was it out of the blue for you?
It was. And I thought, this is interesting. But he didn't actually spend a long time there. He came home early, deliberately, I think. So we sort of proceeded from there slowly, because I wasn't, I had two little kiddies and wanted to do this very carefully. And
so you were open to it?
Well, yes, I'd been on my own for a year, thought that was my fate. I was 34. It really wasn't my fate at 34, but whatever. I had two little kids.
34 seems so young now.
I know, and I looked, and my two little kids were my focus, keep them stable. And there's all this stuff going on in the background about, divorce and all that nonsense. So kind of wasn't something I was even dealing with, really. It was just sort of, this is kind of nice, but, hadn't thought much about it, and protecting the children was the thing. So he'd never stayed overnight or anything for quite a long time, until I think Alex said, he's a typical 4-year-old with ADHD, why isn't Max here in the morning? I want to play with him. He was a big kid, so yeah. So and of course we didn't get married for 17 years. We were together for that long before we got married.
Were you living together?
Yes, yeah. And there kind of wasn't any need, as far as I could see, for getting married. And when I said, because Max broached the subject, at my 50th birthday, when my sister was there and a couple of friends out for dinner, and he said something about that you'll be able to, I can't remember what it was, you'll be able to see the new deck we're going to put on our house at Waihi Beach, because we'd bought that place, when you come for our wedding. I'm going, excuse me? Did somebody say wedding? And my sister was there, and she said, did you not know about that? And I said, no, you never mentioned it before. So we got married in the following February, and people did come to see our new deck that we'd put on the back of the house.
So you've gone from being a bit surprised by this young guy, and you're 50 years old now. What are you feeling about him at this stage?
Oh, by that stage had been together a long time, and yeah, it was solid, very solid relationship. I think we were incredibly lucky. We had a really solid relationship based on a lot of mutual respect and intellect and a lot of talking. We talked all the time. I think that's what I miss most. I come downstairs in the morning, I put the radio on because I can't stand the silence. And the noise upstairs from him playing with his music toys. And music, of course, that was something as well. So, we were together 32 years, and we just didn't really have a crossword. We just rubbed along really nicely. And, I think we were very fortunate. We didn't seem to need to work at it really either. This was just how we were. The kids adored him. So, we were just fortunate, I think.
So when he died,
That was, yeah. Because he'd had, some indication that on my 60th birthday we had a lovely big lunch, sort of long running lunch over at my daughter's place in Hamilton, so people were coming and going. And that night he went to the rugby with son-in-law. Son-in-law is an accountant in Hamilton. And so they were in the corporate box with Judith Collins and all the right people. But he realised that he couldn't get back down to the car without help, and he was really worried about that. He'd started to notice some things. He'd go down the road to look after or do something for the mother of the guy who was our best man, who lived across the road and a few blocks down, and he'd have to stop halfway. And this is someone who was relatively fit. It was, had still been playing indoor soccer and a bit of squash and that sort of thing, and he was getting odd sensations in his arms, which he didn't really understand. We had the 60th birthday in Hamilton and came back, and we were standing there washing dishes or something, and he said, I don't think I'm going to make it to my 60th. And I said, seriously, why? And he said, I just had this, told me about the sensations he was getting. And I said, well, when are you seeing the doctor? And he said, I've already made an appointment. Really? He made his own appointment, and it was for Friday. This was Monday. And I said, why aren't you going tomorrow? Well, Friday was convenient. Whatever. So we went on Friday, and our GP wanted to give him a good fright, wanted to call an ambulance, get him to the hospital, because his blood pressure was 220 over something or other. And he said, I can't, I've got Linda's car. And she allowed him to drive home. Oh, no, he came and picked me up at work, and we went to the hospital. But he FaceTimed me, because we both had iPhones at that stage. He said, I thought I'd better kind of do this in person. I have to go to the hospital. And I thought, good job. Our GP has given him a good kick up the bum. So went to the hospital, spent many hours there while they tried to get his blood pressure down to something vaguely reasonable, because he was stroke territory at that point. He was fine, because blood pressure doesn't necessarily make you feel unwell. But his was 220 over one something or other, and that's just seriously not good. So they got it down, and then they had him on the list to do various things. So he was on the usual stuff for blood pressure and angina, which he started to get more of. And then there was the weekend that we spent in Whangamata, which eventually killed him. So we were intending to come back early because John, who was our best man, was over from Colorado with the family. So we wanted to spend a day with him before they went. Their oldest one was going to university at Otago. So we were intending to come back on the Sunday anyway and spend time with John. But of course that never happened. But it was lovely that John was here. He was distraught, of course. I gave him jobs to do to make a little video. And
did your natural calmness come to play at any stage?
I think it did. Again, I didn't panic because they had taken him off in the ambulance, and I have had detached retinas in my eyes, so I can't drive at night, especially on a country road. I had to go to the hospital in Thames, and that was going to be an issue because it was 4 o'clock in the morning. So I said, look, as soon as it's light, I will follow you in my car, because I thought I was going to bring him back to Whangamata and we'd finish our weekend and go back and see John. And as soon as there was a little sliver of light, I got in the car and drove. I had no idea where I was going. But when I got to the hospital and asked about him, they said, oh, no, we don't have anyone by that name. And a nurse behind the receptionist said, oh, Max Christopherson, could you come with me? And I thought, this is not good. So, and I'd arrived with a bag with his tablet and his glasses that he'd forgotten and all that, so I thought that's what we were going to do. And so he died in the ambulance on the way on the Kopu Hikuai. They'd called because they're volunteer paramedics in Whangamata, and they're not allowed to give pain relief, so they had pulled over to a rest area and called the highly qualified senior paramedic to come out and meet them, and apparently Max coded as he opened the back door on the ambulance. So they tried to revive him for 29 minutes, and thank God they didn't do it any longer, because well, who knows what he would have been like after 29 minutes of trying to revive him. So I didn't find out how long that had been until much later when I phoned the police officer who'd been with me. So there were 5 police there, because unexpected death of somebody who's not old. And so I think the entire Thames police were there. Gradually they whittled that down to 2, Kenneth and another guy And Kenneth was just lovely. And of course, then I had to do a statement of what had been happening. And so they said, oh, we'll take you down to the police station. And I thought, really? You have to do that? I'm not a suspect or anything. And then fortunately, one of the medical people said, oh, use the whānau room. So that was great. So we did the statement of what had happened in the last 24 hours. And I said to Kenneth, this is a repeat. I had to do this for my mother as well. And he was just horrified. I said, you kind of know how to do these things. And of course, I was within my volunteer work as neighbourhood support. I work with police, so I'm kind of used to them. And I was a police reporter at the Waikato Times for many years. So those guys are familiar to me, and the way they work is familiar to me. So, yeah, we did the whole statement in the whānau room, and I was trying to get hold of my daughter, who was listening to a podcast, so she didn't actually answer her phone. I had to send her a text to tell her what had happened. Then she rang me and get hold of my son in Australia and various other people. So, and it really was, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do that. And whether that's training, I don't know. But it was one of those things. The one thing I did do when they finally let me go, and Kenneth just came and gave me a big hug, and he said, you drive carefully, because this is the sort of thing that causes accidents. So I was very carefully driving home, and all the way through the Karangahaki Gorge, I just screamed, thinking, why is this happening? And of course I had to leave him there, which wasn't good, because he then had to be taken to Waikato Hospital for an autopsy. So the police take over after that. So, and then had to bring him back here and all this sort of thing. So, and my daughter had said, right, we're coming over to Thames, you shouldn't be by yourself. And I said, no, look, I'll drive home. Kind of wanted to be by myself at that point. Go to the Mount, and they put their 4 children with the other grandparents, and they both came over, and they were amazing. Provided food, bought food, waited till I got here, and just kind of took over looking after me and then the various people who were coming in and out as people learned what was going on. So, because it was a Saturday, it was a weekend, very conveniently. So, yeah, it just sort of went from there. And then I had to make arrangements. And again, Kate was really good at, we talked about it a bit, no back and forth to Hamilton because they still had the children to deal with. And she said, well, why don't we do something in Hamilton? Because he'd been public relations manager for the university. That's where he did his degree and his postgrad and everything. So, and I thought, well, that actually makes sense because he didn't have a circle of friends here. So she kind of set it all up at Waikato, which was exactly the right place to be. So, yeah, it was great. She took care of things and I paid the bills. It was just easy. And coming up with music and all that sort of thing. I think what's different now is post-COVID, we don't have funerals within days. We can do it months down the track. We can have a memorial. And I think on reflection, I might have done that, except that I kind of wanted to draw a line under where things were. But because my son couldn't come back from Australia because his passport had expired, and his sister couldn't come from Australia because she was waiting for her new passport to arrive because we were all going to a family wedding 3 or 4 weeks afterwards. I would have preferred to wait, but we didn't do that then, and we do now. And I've said to my family, I don't care if you have a funeral. It's none of my business. That's for the living people. If you want to do something, fine. But
did you see? Was it important for you to see his body?
Yes, it kind of was. I saw him in the ambulance, but in the ambulance, people were always with me because of the unexpected nature of his death. So there was either a police officer or an ambulance officer there. So the senior ambulance officer rummaged around till she found his hand, which was still warm. When it went cold, I didn't really want to do that anymore. But I couldn't sit there and have a conversation with him in an ambulance. And because he was then going to be taken to the mortuary at Thames and then to Hamilton, I felt like I was under everybody else's control. So I just did what I was told, basically.
So you wanted to have time alone with his body?
I did, yeah.
And how was that?
When we came back, when he was sent back here, we all, like my daughter and her husband and my sister, and a couple of friends who were not going to be able to go over to Hamilton for the memorial or whatever it was, wanted to see him. And what was interesting was I'd had to put one of our cats down about 3 or 4 weeks before he died. Good old Nash, he was a lovely old fat boy. And Max was in Whangamata when I had to make that call, looking after one of his cats who'd had crystals in his urine. So he was at the vet saving this cat, and poor old Nash, he had diabetes, So he went into a diabetic coma. So I had to put him down. And what I'd seen with Nash was he had the most beautiful gold-flecked eyes. And when I was holding him while the vet put him down, the eyes went black. I thought, he's not here anymore. The thing that makes him Nash isn't here anymore. And it was like that with Max too, because I said, do not embalm. It's brutal. It's a horrible thing. Don't do that. None of that stuff, please. So he was a few days later, I think it was about the Wednesday, he died on the Saturday. So he was a bit sunken. He was a grey colour. They'd done his hair weird. I told him to get a haircut on the Friday, and he said, oh, no, I'll leave it till I get home. So his hair was too long, and it was all brushed to one side. And the weird thing was they needed clothes for him. And I just went and grabbed his nearest Rush T-shirt, because that's his big band. And I heard a voice in my head going, no, not that one. Okay. And all the T-shirts, 105 band T-shirts had fallen off the shelves a few days before, and I'd folded them all neatly and put them all back. And the old ones, which were probably too small, were on the bottom. So I went into the wardrobe, and sitting on the top was Rush Exit Stage Left tour. And I looked at that and thought, seriously? 1983? You won't even be able to get into this T-shirt. I suspect they cut it up the back for him to fit, because he's a little bit bigger than he had been. He was never fat. He was just got broader as he got bigger. And there's a picture of that in the photo book that I had made for him, for the kids and various friends. So that was the T-shirt. I think, okay, is that the one? Yeah, that's the one, apparently. So he had that and a pair of shorts and no shoes. Can't have any of that. So he was dressed as I expected him to be, but he wasn't there. His body was absent. The one, the person that I had loved for 32 years wasn't present at all.
It was just a body.
It was just a body. And so I felt okay, because he was cremated, and I felt fine about that, thinking, well, he's gone. As Nash had been, he'd gone.
But it was important for you to see that.
Oh, yes.
To know it.
To know it, yeah. I hadn't seen my parents, mainly because I was too scared at 13, and then when my father died, I thought, no, I don't think I want to do that. And I kind of wish that I had now, because I think it is a sort of finality in that you realise they aren't there anymore. What made them them is not here. So it was kind of comforting. I mean, I sat there and talked to him, but it was kind of, just he wasn't there anymore. He wasn't inhabiting that body.
So when you were talking to him, you were really just sort of maybe talking to yourself?
Yeah, probably.
Just telling him how you were feeling?
Not really. I think I remember thinking, saying something about that we were going to have to tie-ho about having any kind of memorial because Alex couldn't get back and all of this sort of thing, which in the end we did it on the Friday anyway, because we need to kind of do this. And on reflection, I would have done it several weeks later. And I have done that with a very good friend of mine had died of cancer, and Jan's funeral, she died sort of during the COVID thing, so her funeral was much later. And because there were three of us who'd had our husbands die very suddenly, unexpectedly, and too young, and Jan had called us the Merry Widows. So often I would call Jan about something or other, and I kept trying to, I must tell Jan about, no, she's gone. So there's that thing that you need that finality of the fact they're not here. But it was great when we had a a memorial for Jan about a year later. It was really nice. So I'm in two minds. I don't think we should rush these things. And I've just said to my son, as he's just gone back to Australia, when this happens, Alex, you don't have to get on a plane and come. What are you going to come for? Nothing will happen. There's no funeral within a few days or anything. I'm sure my sisters or somebody will want to organise something, but that's not my business. That's theirs.
So you're saying that funerals are for the living?
They're for the living people. Yeah, for their goodbyes or their whatevers. It's got nothing to do with me.
I guess this is a good point to talk about. So you're an atheist?
Yeah, I'd call myself a humanist. When I looked at the humanist 10 commitments, that's where I sit.
That's what
having
resonated
empathy,
with you.
being politically involved, looking after your environment, looking after the people in your community, all of that sort of thing. All of that makes me a humanist. But I don't believe in a God, no. I was raised in the Methodist Church, and confirmed in the Methodist Church at 13, as you are. So I've got the background to know what I don't believe in.
When you were young, did you feel any kind of spiritual attachment to your church, or was it just going through the process, going through the motions?
But because Mum made us go to church on Sundays, and it was kind of a waste of a morning. But Methodist Church is kind of but quite free thinking, and now I've learnt more about, because we were Wesleyan Methodist, I've learnt a lot more about Charles Wesley, for instance, and his beliefs, which are humanist, from a friend of mine, Dr. Alistair Rees, who's New Zealand's expert on the treaty and how the church was involved in that. And he and I have talked about this quite a lot, and I said if I'd known more about Charles Wesley and his beliefs, might have felt some more connection to it, because his beliefs were external. Yes, he was a believer, but he was more involved in his community and looking after people, which is kind of where I sit. So, I'd call myself a humanist rather than an atheist, which is kind of anti-something. I'm not anti it, it's just I don't believe in it. And I have a lot of religious friends who are churchgoers, and we muddle along quite nicely, and they say their prayers and have a prayer wall with my name on it and all of that. That's fine if it makes them feel better, but thoughts and prayers aren't going to get something done. Get off your knees, unclasp your hands, go do something. Is my theory, is, you do stuff in your community.
A lot of people, especially if they have very strong religious feelings, are very frightened by the idea that there's nothing after death.
No, I'm not.
You're not frightened by that at all.
No, and now I've had to actually confront it, because it's going to happen. My mother was very interested in Professor Lloyd Geering's beliefs, and she told me a lot about, even as a young thing, and she said, he's such an interesting man. Of course, he's still alive, and while he is of a religious belief, he doesn't believe there's anything after death, and I think there isn't either. The lights go out. I think there is, having had these weird experiences with Max flitting about being annoying for a couple of weeks after he died, things that I cannot explain, I think there is a spirit that remains. Someone with that much spirit doesn't just wink out and disappear. And for those couple of weeks, there were numerous little reminders, like the T-shirt. When we were taking his ashes out to Whangamata, which is that painting on the wall, as his friend Andrew did that, of Hauturu, which is Clark Island. And of course, Max spent a lot of time at Whangamata as a young person, surfed there, and he loved it. And that's almost where he died. So, and a lot of his ashes are there. They're all over the place. I've taken them to places where, like there's some at our beach, there's some at Waihi Beach. I put some in a little pill container in our house at Waihi Beach, which I sold last year. Do you think I could find them? I've hid them somewhere. They're still in the house. So he's taking care of that for me as far as I'm concerned. There were so many odd things. The morning that we were going to Whangamata to take his ashes out with his sister, Karen, who'd arrived, and Alex, and his brother, Carl. And I was getting dressed, and I was putting some earrings on, and I heard dangly cats in my head. What? Dangly cats? Seriously? What's that? He'd given me these earrings that got a little cat face. He was a cat nut. Little cat face, and the bottom hangs out the other side with a little wiggly tail. They're my dangly cats. Apparently I was supposed to wear those, which I did, and then the back of it dropped off when we put the ashes in the water, so I've only got one dangly cat and one head. So, and those sorts of things are like, what are you talking about? The other thing that happened was, my sister was here, my older sister. She arrived, immediately the next day, just took care of me, as did Kate. And she went out to hang out some washing on the Monday morning. Max's office was in our laundry, because it's a big laundry, so he had a desk and everything set up there. Bit of a mess, and I didn't touch it for months. But a piece of paper that was sitting on that desk came off the desk. The door wasn't open. Came off the desk, did a little twirl, landed at Sue's feet. And she picked it up, and she's a JP, so it looked like a very legal sort of letter. So she said, I think you need to have a look at this. And it was a letter from AMP that had obviously arrived on the Wednesday before he died, and he just put it on the desk to deal with when he got home. And it was about, we don't have an address for you, but New Zealand Post says this is your address. We just want to check that it was for your life insurance. Was it life insurance? I knew he'd had some at some point, but probably hadn't bothered to pay it. And there'd be like 2 moths and $5 in it, but So she said, I think you should ring them. So I rang A&P, and they said, oh yes, he's had life insurance with us for many years. I didn't know. So that was a bit of a surprise. They got it all sorted on the Saturday morning after his funeral. I got a thing saying there would be some money, and it wasn't $5 and a moth in my account. I thought, he knew I wouldn't clear that desk for months, but he knew Sue would look. So how did that happen? When no doors were open, there was no breeze, and it just came off and landed at her feet.
There's a very famous neuroscientist called David Eagleman.
Oh yes.
Who, he's on one hand he's a humanist, but he calls himself a possibilian.
Oh, you like that word?
He doesn't believe there's anything. He adheres to humanist principles, but he said you can't be absolute because we really just don't know.
We don't know.
He's left the door open a little bit.
You're not quite agnostic, and having seen these weird things happen with Max, and it was stupid things too. I'd ask him, oh, where did you put whatever? And I'd hear a voice in my head telling me where he'd put whatever. The TV, I turned it on to watch the news because I'm a news junkie, and it went all pink. I thought, oh, now what? Voice in my head said, unplug the thing, leave it up for 3 minutes, not 2 minutes, 3 minutes, then plug it in again. Came right. And there's been a number of those little things.
So Max used to take care of those kind of things?
Yeah, he did. Well, he was a technology nutter, so yes. There was a light bulb up the top of the stairs that had gone for 13 years without burning out, and it burnt out that week. Our house alarm kept going off in the night, which was really, really annoying because they'd had Alex here and his sister Karen here, and this bloody thing kept going off. Don't know why, just annoyances. And whether I'm attributing things, active attribution, which was one of Max's favourite sayings, I don't know. But there was something happening for those maybe 2 weeks or so, and then he moved on. So I don't know what happens. I believe it's with my brother. He went to sleep for 3 days and didn't wake up, and I thought, well, that suits me. That's fine. You always worry about how you will be at the end. And having seen how my amazing oncologists and all those people involved in the cancer centre take care of you, I don't think I'll be dealing with much pain or anything. And I feel really well at the moment.
So what's your timeline?
When I saw a surgeon, I was suspicious because I saw him within about 5 days of being in hospital, and I thought, this is not good, because they said I'd see someone within 2 weeks. So I saw a lovely surgeon, who I've never seen again, of course, who told me, look, your stage... I said, well, what stage are we at? Because we discussed all the technical stuff, because they hand you all your results as you walk out of the hospital. And I'm nosy, so I looked them all up to see what they meant. And he said, you're stage 4. I thought, okay, that's a surprise, because I'd had all these investigations. How did we get from there to there? I said, so how did we get here? And he said, it's a very aggressive beast, and I won't be doing surgery because it will not be helpful. I thought, okay, this is not good either. So straight to oncology. Was right over Christmas, New Year, so I didn't see oncology immediately. I've discovered it when I'm on various Facebook pages for colorectal cancer, they often don't see somebody for a couple of months. So we are actually better than a lot of that American stuff, which they pay for. And Ben, the surgeon, had said to me, don't go private, you'll be faster and better in the public system. And he works in the private as well. He was right. So when I went to see the oncologist, and I took a friend with me who's stage 4 melanoma but is now in remission. She went into remission the day I went into hospital. She and I had a trip planned next month through Europe. We're kind of not going, so that was a bit of a blow. Her husband doesn't want to travel anymore, but we both want to do more things. So took Kathy with me, and so I said, okay, you've gone around all of this. I've looked it up, and I imagine that you'll be using Folfox, which is the regimen that I'm on. He said, you know stuff. And I said, well, it's my body. I need to kind of understand what's happening, and I'm nosy. And of course,
sorry to interrupt, Linda, but you're also a journalist.
I know, so it's natural.
And if people don't understand what a journalist is a person who doesn't just want to know, they need to know.
I need to know. It's my body. And I do have friends in the same sort of situation. I've got a friend who's got the same oncologist. also stage 4 melanoma. He doesn't want to know anything. That's fine. Well, I do, because I'm a participant in this journey, and if I hear that word one more, I'll slap someone. So I said to him, okay, what are we talking time-wise? Because the surgeon said oncology will be able to tell you that. He said, do you want the brutal honesty? And I said, I want everything, Will. And he said, 6 to 12 months. And my reaction was kind of like, I said to him, it's about what I guessed, because I knew it wasn't operable. So if it's not operable, then what are we doing? So I was fine with that. Kathy and I went off and had a coffee somewhere, talked about other things. Again, I couldn't really get anxious about it. And I don't know why I was that calm.
Even in the depths of the night when you wake up from sleep and it's all silent, the fear doesn't descend upon you?
No fear. And I don't know why that is. I've tried to examine it, but my thoughts about it have not changed in the several months that I've now known. So that was January. So 6 to 12 months, I'm 3 months through it already. I think what's changed is that once I started chemo, because at that point I was virtually unable to eat anything. The weight was dropped. I've lost 16 kilos. Everything's being held up by belts and pins. The fact that once I had chemo, and they give you heavy duty steroids and heavy duty anti-nauseas, once you do that, and then you take that before you have your chemo infusion, I was suddenly feeling so much better, able to eat anything, go out for lunch with friends. I don't have a lot of energy, and I have to keep reminding myself that I'm sick, because I keep thinking I'm going to do what I'm going to do. You know, go out, I really need to weed that driveway. No, you're not, because your body says, sit down and shut up.
Now, other people I've talked to, when they've had their diagnosis, they said, no, I won't do chemo, there's no point. But what you've just said to me, chemo actually helps you to feel better.
Oh, God, yes. The aim was to make me more comfortable for the time that's left.
Now, that's very interesting.
Yeah. And because I was feeling so ill, and both my sisters saw me when I'd had no treatment, and they were worried sick, because I couldn't look at pictures of food. So I was struggling with the lack of energy because I couldn't eat, and feeling nauseous all the time. On Dansitron, which is the best thing for nausea as far as I'm concerned, I have a thing called long QT syndrome, which means my heart doesn't catch up with the beats. It's got a little delay. And I only discovered that about 2 years ago by accident when I joined a health study, and they were trying a new kind of asthma medication. Did an ECG, the first one I've ever had, and they made me do it 3 times and came back and said, you've got a thing called long QT syndrome, which I knew about because my uncle had it, and so does my cousin Colin. So I knew about it, and I knew how serious it was, because your heart can just stop. But I said to the oncologist, does that really matter? And frankly, the ondansetron really works. There's another one they won't give me, which is everyone calls domperidone, but it's domperimide. That increases your long QT to the danger point. But at this point, if my heart stops, and it's neither here nor there. But now that I'm feeling well, I realise that I actually can do quite a lot. The annoying thing about losing so much weight and muscle tone, and I ended up back in hospital because I had mistaken pulmonary embolisms for asthma after my first chemo, and I woke up on the Saturday having had the steroids for 3 days, and they just then stop, which we've sorted out. We're not stopping them immediately, we're actually tapering them down, and that makes a difference. And I said to the oncologist, I occasionally take steroids for my asthma. Why are we stopping such a heavy duty one just like that? Because I'm falling off the cliff on day 4. So we've worked out how we can do that, and it worked this time. But yeah, I woke up on the weekend and thought, asthma, really? Seriously? Do you really want to do this now? Put up with it for a couple of days. Nothing was working. Called my oncology nurse Monday, and she said, could you get yourself to the hospital, please? She said, either call an ambulance, or if you're okay to drive, just go, because she could tell I wasn't getting enough breath. So I went up there, and all panic takes place. They weren't sure if I was having a heart attack. Then they did a CT scan, and my lungs are full of embolisms. It could have killed me. So I was hearing horses' hooves and thinking horses, and it was zebras. So it was, it was just a stupid error of judgment on my part. And I said to the oncologist who saw me the following week, he said, well, you've had a shit week, haven't you? I said, well, yes, and it was dumb. And he said, no, it wasn't, that you could have mistaken it for asthma, but it wasn't. So now I'm on these blood thinners for life, quite heavy duty jobs, which make my nose bleed in the morning. So I'm sitting here having a cup of tea and my nose drops blood into my cup of tea. It's not very nice. And that's going to be the case. And he said, you're going to have to take these for the rest of your life. And we both looked at each other and laughed. So, he's kind of got used to my weird sense of humour. He thinks I'm weird. He says I'm refreshing. But actually, I think he thinks I'm weird. I'm fine with being weird. And it's just, the whole fear thing hasn't entered my consciousness, really.
Well, you said before that you know what's ahead, and you
Yeah.
know that you'll be taken care of, and that drugs will take care of the pain
Yep.
when the time comes when you're confined to a bed.
Yep.
Have you ever thought about assisted dying?
Yes, my stepmother did. She finally died at 95, but she belonged to the Euthanasia Society, and we talked about that a lot. Yes, I would, but only if I wasn't as well as I am now. That's the thing. I'd have to be feeling a lot more miserable, and it takes months to get approved, by which time I'd probably be dead anyway. So yes, I would, and I have looked at it in case. But I'm feeling to the point now where I feel relatively normal until I remember, actually you're sick and no, you can't clean the windows, or you can clean one of the windows, but then you're going to have to stop because you forget. If you're feeling well, you actually forget that you're sick. And I have to keep reminding myself, actually, you have cancer and you're dying. But my motto has always been, yes, I'm dying, but not today.
And I have to ask this. At this stage of your life, does it matter that the windows are a bit dirty?
No, except they're annoying if you're sitting there looking at them. Well, open the doors instead. But I did clean one lot of windows and then thought, okay, you do have to remember that you actually don't have enough energy to do this. And, now I have to get a bloke in to do my hedge because I'm not getting up there on the ladder to do the hedge. So I've got this lovely man who's a Air New Zealand pilot who pivoted to doing garden stuff during COVID. He comes and does my hedge. So I'd much rather pay him to do it.
And are you enjoying food at this stage?
Yes.
What do you like to eat the most?
Just about anything. Something with a good flavour. Eat a lot of fruit because it's good to keep everything moving. And you have to keep everything moving when there's little blockages. The hospice nurse always asks about, how are your bowels? She's good on bowels. And you do get used to just talking about that stuff without embarrassment in front of your son at the oncology appointment. It's important to keep things moving, and I've always eaten a lot of fruit. I can eat chocolate again, yay. But most things...
Are you a milk chocolate or a dark chocolate?
Dark chocolate, definitely dark chocolate.
What percentage?
Not too high, that gets too bitter. So, I can't remember what the percentage is, but yeah, anything with dark chocolate. And the Goulian Belgian chocolate is my absolute favourite. And I bought myself a little box the other day when my chemo got cancelled because my neutrophils, which is your defence against infection, was 1 point down. And my oncologist said, yeah, we're not doing that today. You've got to be well enough to do the chemo. And the next day I had a cold and thought, oh, that was it. So, because I have to do bloods every time before I do my chemo. So they know exactly where these things are. And I said to the oncologist I saw the other day, because I see somebody every 2 weeks, not necessarily Will, who's my oncologist, and I said, can I have a copy of the bloods? Because I'm used to seeing them on Manage My Health, and I can't see them now because Manage My Health got hacked. She said, oh, of course you can. And the copy of the letter that she'd sent to my GP. And that was really good because it summarised everything and some of the medical stuff, but I also got a copy of all my measurements. So the bleeding nose is because my platelets aren't as good as they should be, and I don't know how we fix that. When I realised I had a cold, I thought, well, how long am I going to have this for, because I have no immunity? A couple of days, it was actually done and dusted, so had the chemo the following week. So they test you every time and make sure you are well enough to handle it. I don't find the chemo uncomfortable at all. I've got a portacath in my right boob. Obviously, they had a couple of goes at putting it in places, and it's now in my right boob. That's fine. I don't feel it. They access it with 3 little points, and then they stab you in the middle. And I must remember to use the numbing cream each time. And then you sit there and read a book or whatever for a couple of hours while it dribbles in. and then you take home, because I'm on Folfox, so you take home a thing called 5FU, which I love that name. So the little pump is like a little baby's bottle. It's pink, and you can put that in your pocket, and it's wired into here for 48 hours. And then a specialist oncology nurse comes and removes it, which is great because then you can have a proper shower. I am a master of doing the bottom half shower because you can only shower from here down, and the cat wash up the top. But yeah, it's Portacath makes a big difference. It's a little surgery to put it in, a half-hour surgery to put it in. It'll just stay there. It's titanium. Apparently it's a fancy one that they haven't seen before, so I had to have a little booklet to give to the nurse. She had to figure out how to take it off. Doesn't cause me any discomfort, really. And it makes all the stuff you have to do comfortable.
I'd like to ask you from actually I've got two very pressing questions I want to ask you, but I'll put the most pressing one aside for a sec. From a journalist perspective, now we do hear a lot of negativity about our health system at the moment.
Yes, we do.
From a journalist perspective, what do you think about our public health system in 2026?
Public health is going to be a problem. You can't get to see a GP when you need one. I had to wait several days to see my own GP, and I wanted to see him because he's the one that's got me through all the tests. I trust him, and I wanted to see him, not some whoever. In general, if you are really sick, our system is fantastic. I cannot fault what's happened with me, and I'm dying. You know, they don't need to rush, but the wraparound services I've had, I was put under hospice care quite promptly, so you sign into that, so you're in their care. They work behind the scenes. The hospice nurse was here for 2.5 hours. She goes through and makes a whole design of who your support systems are. You know, who's looking after you, your family, who are your family, because none of them are here, so you know I can't do that. But I do have lots of good friends, and I can't believe the number of people who are turning up to see me out of nowhere. And I say, oh, what brings you to Tauranga? Well, you do. We came to see you. Much rather do that than have them show up to a memorial when I'm not here. So that's been amazing. But the system, when you're in the system, everything works. I was straight into oncology. It took maybe a month or 6 weeks, I think, to get into my first chemo. I'm seen every 2 weeks by the oncologist. I have my chemo every 2 weeks if everything is going well. Hospice rang this morning just to check how I was. Did I need a visit? I've seen the hospice nurse who took care of. I said to her, look, I've taken another steroid because I was feeling really unwell, and I had to deal with my lawyer because I was redoing my will, and I had to deal with somebody else. I needed to feel okay and functional, and within half an hour I felt much better. And she said, right, I'll talk to oncology. Oncology rang me back and said, yep, you know what you're doing, that's fine. When you see the oncologist on Monday, we'll figure out how we do this so that it works for you. You couldn't fault what's being done. They are amazing. And then I've had the social worker. So when I might need help with cleaning my house, which I have to remember to do because I think I'll do the bathroom and think, okay, that was enough of that, because I keep forgetting I'm sick. And then I've had the physio, because I said, look, I'm concerned that I'm losing muscle mass, and I was very fit, and now I'm not because I've got breathing issues, which means I can't exercise. So this is happening, and physio rang next day, came over, gave me a whole lot of exercises, put risers on my toilets. I went upstairs and looked at the scaffolding that was on my one upstairs and thought, oh my God, I'm a frail old lady. But it works. It's at the right height. I don't have to think, how am I going to get off this thing? Because my leg muscles, and particularly my left leg, have gone. She had me working on the stairs about how I get up and down the stairs, and she had me step backwards onto my left leg, which just gave way. Right, that's not happening. So I do my exercises every day. I have a stretchy band to do upper arms, and then a lot of little stepping ones, and she's bringing me a little cycle thing so that I can do that. Just really good stuff, and it's working. She rang me on Wednesday night and said, how's it going? I said, oh, amazing. I can feel the difference already. I've also got a friend who's an occupational therapist, or was, she's retired now, who knows the guys that put in a temporary stair lift when I get to that point. So expensive, but like 10 grand. But if I get to the point where I can't get upstairs, then we will be able to do that. But I want to stay fit enough to get up my own stairs, even if it's slowly. And she did say to me, don't go like a bull at a gate, one step at a time, breathe in, breathe out on the next step. So slowing me down is the thing. And I do take the stairs more slowly now because it is quite hard.
So you want to stay home for as long as possible?
Oh, yeah, because that's normal.
This is my pressing question. Are you going to miss the fact that when the time comes, you're close to death, you're on your hospice bed, you're going to miss the fact that Max is not sitting there with you?
Oh, yes. He wouldn't have coped with this, though. He would have found it very, very, very difficult.
Why is that?
Even after 32 years, he'd said to a friend of ours, a friend of his actually, that he would, because he'd been spending the odd weekend, long weekend at Whangamata looking after these cats as a favour to this lady. And he just said casually to our friend, oh, I'm not going to do it anymore, I miss Linda too much. So the fact that he would know I was dying, I don't think he'd cope with it very well.
So it's probably better that he died first?
Yes, I think so. I know what he's been like when friends have died, and the one thing he doesn't know that one of his very close friends in Australia has also got cancer, and of course he hadn't told us for about a year. But Bruce made contact with me and he said, oh, this is what's happening with me. And I thought, oh, for heaven's sake, Max wouldn't have dealt with that at all.
Are you going to miss anything? As you're approaching your death, are you thinking about the things that you're going to miss about life, or do you feel that you've lived a full life and you're satisfied with the life you've lived?
Pretty much. My old boss at Social Link, I'd kept trying to retire, and the night that I actually left NZME, because we took redundancy, that night I got some work, just temporary stuff, with Social Link, which is a overarching body for all the charities and social agencies in the Western Bay. And I was just going to do a couple of contracts, comms contracts for them. Well, 5 years later, I was still there. And I finally had to say last year, could I please leave because I'm old? And I'm actually having lunch with them all next week, which is lovely, because we're all still really connected. But the old boss came round and we had a coffee and a chat, and she said, do you have a bucket list? And I thought, no, I actually don't. I've done quite a lot with my life, and I've done a lot of travel. There were places I still wanted to go. I still wanted to go to Kenya and see the animals, mainly because my older sister had, and she just loved Africa. And she travelled constantly. So there were some places I wanted to go, but nothing that was that vital. And I'd done reasonable stuff with my working life and, that sort of thing. Written a couple of books, still working, reviewing books, which I can still do. There wasn't anything that I didn't want to become Prime Minister or anything like that. I've done plenty of stuff. I don't have regrets about missing anything, really. The only thing I do worry about is I haven't seen my grandchildren for a very long time, through completely different circumstances. And so I would love to see them.
Well, at this point, usually for the Last Breath podcast, I just record people, just an audio recording, but today I'm filming you so that I can give you a video file for your grandchildren.
Yes, that would be lovely.
And in 20 years' time, one of them might be moved to watch it, to just remember what Grandma was like. What would you like to say to them?
Just remember that, because I haven't seen them in ages, through completely different circumstances, that Grandma loved them, and Grandpa Max loved them too. And we wanted to see you grow up, because they're now 13, 11 and twins age 10. So I haven't seen them since they were quite little.
What's their names?
Jamie is 13 and Ethan is 11, and Blair and Nicholas, girl and boy, are 10. So, I would like to have spent more time with them. Through circumstances, we are not doing that. What they will get is a surprise, because I've redone my will. So when they're at about 25, they will inherit quite a good sum of money that will hopefully set them up with a house or travel, or hopefully they'll have finished uni by then, because they will be going to university. We'll set them up for something, and it's enough to do that. And that's going to be a nice little surprise. I wish it was a fly on the wall. But just a reminder that I was there that I was always waiting to see them, and I always loved them and always wanted to know what they were doing.
What wisdom would you like to pass on to them? Wisdom about life wisdom that you've learned and you think is valuable.
I think probably, you only get one life, and it can be short or long. So make sure that you don't waste it faffing around with things that don't matter. Find the people that mean something to you. Find the activities that mean something to you. Find your passion, whatever that might be. I remember saying to my eldest one, when he first started school at Southall, I said, "What's your favourite class?" And he said, "Chapel." And I went, "Oh God," whatever. He liked chapel because of the singing. A little while later I said to him, "So what's your favourite class now?" And he said, "Maths." He's an accountant's son. He liked his maths. Okay. So you find what your passion is and then follow that passion, because the thing that you will want to do will be the thing that gives you joy. And if it's not necessarily your work, if it's your other things that you do as your hobbies, running or cycling or singing or... I love to sing, and one of the things that cancer has taken from me is I can no longer sing because I have my lungs full of embolisms. Of all the little thefts of cancer are the things that really piss you off. How dare you take my ability to sing? I sang with the Waikato Rivertones, international world champions, for 18 years. Finally found, I sang with a couple of choirs here, now I sing with a couple of other choirs here, and now I can't. How dare you take that from me? So find the things that give you some joy, and if it's singing or acting or whatever, then follow that. It might not be your work. It might be something other than your work, because work is sometimes stuff we do just so we can pay the bills. But if your work is important to you, make sure it is something that provides something to your community as well. And volunteer. Volunteering is great. It's good for you, it's good for the people you volunteer for, gets you out into your community, makes you participate in the people around you, sort of thing. When you have the time, and you will have the time, then volunteer to help somebody else because it will help you. That's probably my bit of wisdom, is that when you do something for somebody else, you benefit from it. And you can enjoy that as much as the person you're helping or the people or group that you're helping. I found that sort of thing is, I don't volunteer as much as some of my friends do, but yeah, that being able to do something in your community that you know is making it better, that's the whole humanist thing though, isn't it? So that's probably what I would tell them. And yes, you're going to have a nice wee surprise when you're grown up and have finished preparing for your adulthood, and this will help you become what you want to be.
One last question for them. Who is Grandma? In the deep heart of Grandma. Often in these interviews, people reveal things that they don't normally talk about or share, even with people close to them. And we all have our very, very private side. But often people feel impelled at this moment to share a couple of those things. So what would you like to say to your grandchildren in the future about who you really, really were, the heart of you?
I'm probably a bit feisty, like to provide a bit of ginger, and I think that was part of being a journalist. Even though I was incredibly shy, I needed to put that label on my forehead so that I could make change with the things that matter. And that I haven't really given a lot of thought to that about who I was or who I am. But yeah, somebody who loved to read, who loved ideas, who liked a good debate, not an argument or a conflict, but a debate about what works in this world and what doesn't. And somebody who wanted to make things better in their community, I think. And that again, it wasn't something that I deliberately practiced. It was something I fell into doing. You see something and you can fix it. It's like the interview I did about the cardiology things. I could make a difference there by being a journalist and being able to talk about that. And in the 1970s, I had a series of front page things about cardiology that was happening in Waikato, and that led to the setting up of the Waikato Heart Trust, which 50 something years later is still going. And that's providing equipment and all that sort of thing for heart patients. not knowing that in fact, at that stage my father was still alive, I hadn't met my husband, that they would hopefully at some point benefit from those things. So yeah, if you can make a difference in the world, you should. It can be a tiny little difference. It can be helping an animal. It can be just anything. It's that whole thing of saving a little starfish, and well, you can't save them all. Well, you can save that one. So it's those little things you can do in your community that will make you feel good about what you're here on earth to do. And I don't believe that we all have a purpose necessarily. I think we're kind of random, frankly. But you're here, so do something.
What about your children? What would you like to say to them?
Well, they've been interesting characters, and I've just had my son staying with me for a couple of weeks, and we had a great time.
So, first of all, what's their names and how old are they?
Kate is 44, Kate with a C, and Alex is 42, and they're both adopted from stranger adoptions. We have open adoptions with both.
Can I just interrupt just for a second and say that I've never had any children of my own, but I have stepchildren.
Oh, right. Well, you do have children.
Every now and again, somebody has whispered in my ear, but it's not the same as having your own, is it?
Don't agree.
Actually, it is. It's exact. I don't know what it's like to have my own children.
No.
But what I feel for them, I think is pretty real.
And how old were they when you had them?
Maybe 3 and
There you
5
go.
or 6.
That's the age at which you imprint on them. Talking to my son the other day, he doesn't remember when his then father was living with us. He was 3 when Ewan left. So Max's dad, as far as he's concerned. And he wanted, for instance, my wedding and Max's wedding ring, and which I was going to give him anyway, because he wants to make it into something special. And that's kind of how he is. He was my difficult teenager. He was the nightmare kid. I think he's gay, so that might have been an issue when he was sort of 13, 14. We didn't care. It was like, okay, so what? He has a wonderful partner, Troy. They've been together about 11 years. They've bought a house in Queensland. And they, he's turned into this person, having been my nightmare child. He's turned into this loving, empathetic person who understands the world a lot better. And I think possibly because of his various difficulties with ADHD and mental health issues and that sort of thing, he would love to become a counsellor, but of course he lives in Australia, so the training for that's too expensive. Maybe it won't be now. So when I die, he'll be quite well off. So he's grown up, and you see them turn into people that you like as a person. We had a great time for the last 2 weeks, laughed a lot, and he learnt a lot about how I feel about this, so that I could tell him, you can feel like this too, because this is how I feel. You don't need to. He's anxiety plus, you don't need to worry about it, because I'm not worried about it. It's something that's going to happen. I've lived a pretty good life for a reasonable amount of time. Would like to have got old with Max. That wasn't going to be happening. So he's not here. I would feel quite differently, I think, about knowing I'm dying, if Max was still here, if Alex still lived in New Zealand, if I saw more of my daughter. Any of those things might have made a difference. But I'm not a cancer warrior. I really am. I hate that nonsense. I'm going to fight it. No, you do what you're told. You take the medications, see how they work for you. At some point, this particular regime will not work, and then there's no plan B. So if I can beat those odds of 6 to 12 months, that'd be good. If I can feel like this while I'm doing it, even better. He and his partner have made plans to come back in late July, which is my birthday. I intend to be here for that. So, but I don't know what condition I'm going to be in, because it can change. And I'm aware of the fact over the last few weeks I've watched some weaknesses coming in, which I reject entirely, but my body says, no, you can't do that. And that's annoying. And I can't really do anything about that other than do my exercises so I can get up and down the stairs, eat the right things, and eat all the naughty things too. The nutritionist told me twice, cram the calories. I don't care what it is. Ice cream, go for it. Chocolate, yeah, go. Chips and dip, have a go. Whatever you feel like eating, you eat, because you've lost too much weight. And even though I have a thing called Ensure, which comes in big cans, and that gives me enough protein and all that sort of thing, I'm still dropping a bit of weight, which I'm 16 kilos down now. And I'm eating normally, so this is, whatever's going on in here is busy dealing with that. And it is like a separate beast that I can't control. And especially is because the first sign was this lump coming through, which is called lumpy mixed stink face. Because it's horrible. But it doesn't hurt. It's a big hole in my tummy. That is a reminder that this will do what it wants. And it's burrowed its way through from my bowel, through my abdomen, to come out and say hi. If it hadn't done that, I wouldn't have known what was going on. So in some ways, it's probably just as well. But that has been a problem until it started to get attacked by the chemo, and it shrunk right down, and it's now, this morning, quite small. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, goodbye. Big on, McStinky. I was supposed to have some radiation. The radiation oncologist had a look and he said, I think we'll just wait. And then if it starts to grow again, which of course it could, then we'll do some radiation. And that's just one less packet of side effects that I'd have to deal with, because I'd have to go over there every day for 15 minutes, which is the other side of town, and have radiation, and there are side effects from that. So, and if I'm happily dealing with the side effects from the chemo, the oncologist says to me, you actually don't have to put up with that, because I was getting some of the rare ones, including not being able to breathe, which was interesting. It literally locks up your larynx, so you can't breathe. And it happened when I was leaving after my second chemo, and I got to the door of the treatment room and went back to the desk and said, can't breathe. And all it is the chemo locks it up, and then if you wait and you have a warm drink or breathe into your hands, the warmth will actually allow that to dissipate, and you can breathe again. Happened again when I walked into Pack and Save, and they keep it beautifully cool. Walked in there and went, here we go again. Okay, step to the side, concentrate, and then I was shopping. You learn to control that. And he said, but you shouldn't have to put up with that. And the neuropathy in your hands and feet, where you can't feel them. I was just making a meal for tonight because my sister and possibly some friends are coming, and the wobbles. Touching anything cold, and I was trying to take the skin off ice cold chicken pieces, and all you feel is like your hands are sparklers and they're just on fire. So there was a lot of swearing done. But I'm kind of getting used to that. But he said, you don't actually have to get used to that. So they've lowered the amount of oxaliplatin, which is the titanium-based chemo, and it does the worst of these things. So he said, you've had some rare ones, so we'll cut that down a bit. And it hasn't made any difference to what this is doing or anything else. So we'll continue to do it with that slightly lesser amount, because there's 4 other drugs in there as well.
Linda, let's finish up with your daughter.
Yep.
What would you like to say to her?
Probably, Kate, I'd have always loved to see you. I always wanted you to just walk in that door. I didn't tell her that I was sick, because I thought that might be guilting her into making contact. And we don't know why she hasn't made contact. It just happened quite suddenly. And of course I've agonised about that and talked to counsellors, etc. And so my sister told her that I was sick, and then when it was going to be terminal, Alex messaged her and told her, which she did reply to, but she hasn't made any contact. So I don't know what that's about. I can't do anything about it, and frankly I've got more shit going on to deal with that. But I'd still love to see her, and love to see the kids and her lovely husband. That would be a great joy if they just turned up. And I constantly think about them and how the kids are doing, and what are they becoming, because now they're turning into people. They're not littlies anymore. Their pictures are all up the wall though, but that's probably the last photos I took of them. What are they interested in? What are you doing with your life? She's a very, very bright woman. Was intending to do law and all that sort of thing. She's done a degree in te reo, which is brilliant, and hopefully she's making use of that. I'd love to know, what are you doing with that wonderful brain of yours? And she's also a fabulous mother with 4 kids that were all within 3 years of each other. I watched her with that last time they left here. She said, right, everyone in the car, hands on your own bodies. And I said, what was that about? And she said, oh, one of the boys pushed Blair out of the car, and of course it was 4-wheel drive, so she dropped quite a long way. And she said, no, that's the rule. So hands behind their backs, they all got in the car. No fuss, no bother. So she's really good at that stuff. And I'd love to watch her parenting, because I think she's probably very good at it. So
what's your best memory of her growing up, or your best memories?
Oh, gosh. She was always good at making speeches and things at school. She always won the speech contest. And watching her, she did a speech once when she was about 7, I think, about being adopted. And it was fabulous. It was all her own work. I remember sitting there in the classroom listening to this and going, okay. And in high school, she did another one about, and it had to be on a theme. It was something about having a good time. And she said, I'm the result of a good time. And talked about how, she came to be born and all that sort of thing. And again, I thought, she's thought this stuff through. And she listens to podcasts, and she, educates herself. She's a reader. They've got a beautiful over 100-year-old house in Hamilton, and there's some outbuildings, and she turned one of them into a library with beautiful shelves and a ladder that runs along, which was her dream. And my brother and I had the same dream. We always talked about having a wall of books. Well, he had a wall of books in his place in Rome. And my sister-in-law had to get rid of them because she's moved into a smaller place, and she put 895 books on Facebook. Who wants these? Oh, if I'd lived in Rome, yeah, I'll have them all, thank you. Plays and poetry and just fabulous. Oh, he's got a copy of that. Oh, damn. Why do you live so far away? And as you can see around my house, there's books, shelves in every room. Some of them are, quite a lot of them are ones I've reviewed, but that I wanted to keep. Most of them I give away. But some of them are real old favourites, including a couple that Grant had given me as a child to read. So, yeah, her love of books, I think, will stand her in very good stead. But, yeah, I'd love to know what she's now doing in her 40s. How are you, what's your next stage in your life? My son asked something really interesting when he was here. He said, are you excited to know what happens next? I thought, what a great question. And I said, fantastic. And I said, yeah, kind of curious. So we're going to work out a little, if I can let him know there's something after, there will be a sign. We're just trying to figure out what it's going to be. Max and I had that worked out. Do you think I can remember what the sign was? Complete blank. Utter blank as to what we were going to, if there was an afterlife. But yeah, Alex I was pleased to hear him ask that question, because asking it as an excitement means he's coming to terms with the fact. He doesn't want his mum to die, but he's coming to terms with the fact that this is what's going to happen. And of course, he can be a bit of a mess when he tries to talk about that. But saying, are you excited to know what happens next? Yeah, kind of. Curious.
Linda, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, it's been fun to talk about this sort of stuff, because often people don't really want to know. And I have talked about it with Alex and a couple of other friends that, this is a bit of an adventure. Nothing I can change about its future other than thinking, yeah, let's beat that 6 to 12 months timeline.